colleague, Mr. Bladis, as he takes over from me to handle the question and answer session, the interactive session. Thank you, everyone. Let's get to business. Mr. Blazis, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. Thank you so much, Dr. Mutiato Ladejo. I'm so happy that you are here. I got your contact from someone and I just sent the email, and I'm so happy that you are able to join us on this program. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much, Mr. Abasaji, also for joining us, and you've been so wonderful. And thank you so much, David. Thank you very much. So let us get straight into it. Now, for us at Western World, we believe, like I rightly said earlier, that skills empowerment is like the goal for us to achieve out-of-school children, for us to have a sustainable future for them. So I would like to pose the first question to Dr. Mutiat. You wrote a book on what women want, and you work around women, children. So what do you think is the solution, sustainable one, for us to have least amount of children on the streets that are out of school?
Thank you very much. What is sustainable is a long-run arrangement, because as we have presently as a nation now, the demographics is increasing by the day. If you move around and supposing we have a good statistical procedure in the country, you realize that the rate of birth is so high, and the more you have high birth rates with low income, then the more we will have out of school children. It's just reciprocal and cyclical. The more there is poverty, the more there is high birth rate, the more there is poverty, and the reasons why there will be out of school children. Now, various factors could account for having out of school children. It could be due to poverty. It could be due to one form of natural disaster or the other, maybe death of parents, or parents are disabled, maimed in one way or the other, they couldn't earn income, and so they couldn't cater for the children. Or runaway children. Runaway children too are a category of out of school children. Children who choose not to stay with their parents for one reason or the other. So there are various categories of out of school, but the fundamental one that accounts for its high rate is the increasing demographics. And for us to have a sustainable, I doubt if anything could look sustainable unless there is a kind of sensitization. And this sensitization, I could remember checking a document in the 1980s where the Federal Ministry of Health was campaigning that people should reduce the rate of having children. So you can imagine, in almost 40 years now, the campaign has always been there that people should control birth. But then there is this African mentality that also comes with, because I've studied population demographics around the world, and I even discovered that places where you would have expected that there should be a high population, there isn't high population. Then I try to look at it, that what are the causes? Some of the causes are basically, for us in Nigeria, it is cultural. It is cultural in the sense that there is this mentality that women have across the country that you don't know if it's going to be the 10th child that will be successful. Meaning that that mentality keeps pushing a woman to keep giving birth to children. Now, I'm not sure that the ones I had earlier could be successful. Maybe it's the 9th one that will become a governor one day. So based on that mentality, they will keep having children they can't cater for.
Okay, so thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So based on what you've already highlighted, that the reason why we have that is because of high birth rate. So is it that people in the academia are not releasing their the result of their research to the government for them to implement, or why is it that we already know the cause and we are not pursuing that line of action?
Well, presently, as Nigeria is, government doesn't use researchers coming from higher institutions. That's the stark truth. Government doesn't reckon with researchers in Nigeria. Nigerian government reckons so much with what UNICEF has to offer, which is a product of the United Nations. So that is a dichotomy in a politics in research use. Nigerian government would prefer to use the affirmative actions or outcomes of researches published into the world by international organizations, and they will act on that. But whatever Nigerian researchers come up with, it's nothing to write home about from the government. It cuts across all disciplines. It's not as if when it comes to the ones that relate to children, health, and education, it cuts across. So that in itself is a fundamental problem, which causes a disjointed action in what government has to offer. You realize that researchers are in the universities, they write their papers, get promotion, and their journals end up in their private shelves. It is rare for you to see researchers being encouraged or where products of their researches are implemented, even at the local government level. Nobody, I mean, University of Ibadan, for example, is in Oyo State. Akinyele local government and Ibadan North local government, and perhaps part of Ido local government that constitute the local government where University of Ibadan is located. I don't think any of them directly feels the impact of research coming out from University of Ibadan. That's even within the grassroots where University of Ibadan is located. So it's a fundamental problem that is national. And then we are even in a stage that is not defined for now, because Nigeria, as at during this week, Nigeria has 148 private universities, meaning that universities are just springing up. Government doesn't have a direction of making use of what is even coming from the existing universities. Since they don't have a direction of making use of what is coming, they are rather creating more. 148 private universities across Nigeria. So let me put it there that maybe you come up with another question that will lead us on.
Okay, thank you very much, ma. I think David is already coming up, and I want to ask him because he works as the special assistant to the governor of Kaduna State on budgets and planning. So I want to ask David, is it that there's like a misalignment in the goals of the academia and what government needs? That's why government is going for people from outside the country, for UNICEF or United Nations outputs, than going for a localized solution from our academia. David.
Thank you for that question. We usually put planning before budget because you plan first before you budget. If you budget before you plan, it's like climbing a ladder from the top. So with regards to that question, I think that there is the need to develop confidence in our local content generally, right? Because it's like a mindset problem, or is an attitudinal problem that Nigeria tends to value things that are foreign to them. And it's not just in the academic. Generally, even if you go to the market, people prepare to buy, made in Italy, made in UK, made in other countries outside, even Africa, than to patronize their local content or product. So there is a need for reorientation, for a change of mindset, so that we can begin to appreciate our own ingenuity, our own content, and our own products and services. So it's a mindset or attitudinal problem that cuts across different sectors, not just the academic sector. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Obasanjo, you work at the intersection of the governments and the academia, because you are taking input from them for you to develop a solution. You are working on as an NGO, and you are going to government for you to implement that particular intervention. Like I said earlier, bureaucracy is one of the things that I think government has to work on. Imagine submitting a proposal for an approval, not even seeking for money from them in December, and getting it late in May. So how has it been so far, Mr. Obasanjo, working between these two intersections for you to have your impact?
Thank you so much. So I think working at the intersection of private and government partnerships most times has been quite taxing, But however, it's something we must keep doing in order to ensure we have sustainable impact in the lives of children we want to impact. And particularly because individuals, NGOs, parastatals, we have a limited range of numbers we can reach, but with the government, we can reach large numbers. Yes, the approval process of government can be frustrating sometimes because of the bureaucracies and retipism in the civil service. Sometimes you get approvals for letters you submit months after. Sometimes you even forget. And when the approval letter comes in, they omit some of your requests from it, and you need to go and start the process all again from the beginning. But however, for us to create more sustainable change, we don't let that deter us. We try to also develop mechanisms or systems which we can use to mitigate the negative impacts of this. And such mechanisms is like developing relationships with people who work in these civil services, commissions or civil organizations in which we work with. Let's say, because I have good relationship with Ogun State Ministry of Education and particularly SoW. So to ensure we get speedy approvals for some of our projects, I have developed relationship with most of them in that place. And they know once they see our letters, I can easily put a call and say, oh, sir, please, we need an help with it. This project is urgent. This is not urgent. And this has helped us to fast track our interactions, even in Oyo State. And so these are mechanisms we have put in place and systems, relationships we have built to enhance this. And I feel various organizations working with governments can also do that, replicate that, and ensure that we plan ahead of time to submit letters in time and get the approval, because with the government, we can reach more people.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So now talking about, you said about seeking partnership with the government and also so that you can easily fast track your approval. Now, what do you think can be done by NGOs to make their impact sustainable? Because one of the fact is that in Nigeria for now, even going to the Northeast, you see that there are so many NGOs working over there, but are their impact really being felt? Because people will say NGOs money, they are just only collecting foreign money and doing little or none. So how do you think NGOs can make their impact to be sustainable and not just for the media glare?
Okay, yes, very, very important question. So yes, NGOs' impacts are definitely impactful and very, very good projects they have been doing, irrespective of the scale. Sometimes some NGOs can only impact one child at a time. Some can impact 20, some can impact 50, others with capacity can impact 1,000 at a period. And so that's why you see much NGOs doing their own phase in different phases. And so, yes, how they can create sustainable impact is by collaborating with themselves. I normally advise nonprofit to collaborate, because I run a nonprofit and you can't reach everybody. Like I normally say, you can't reach everybody. But if I want to reach people in Oyo, I know I can collaborate with the organization hosting the event to ensure that we do this, because you have more reach and in-depth in the local government you work than me coming again from scratch to start developing stakeholders engagement, community entry, letter writing approvals. So if NGO can collaborate in together, work together, they can create more sustainable impact. Also, NGOs must remove the perspective of saying governments are there to frustrate our work. Governments are normally institutions that are there to scale the activities of either businesses or NGOs or any form of project you want to do. So I will give you a particular example, though I will not mention the organization name. Without the government up during the election period, the application was reaching out to over 1,000 people, and they wanted to reach more people. The moment they partnered with the government and the government agency tweeted and make a post around it, they got 10,000 interaction on that same application that day. And so this is to show you the power of partnership. And if they did not go and partner with the government, they might not have gotten 10,000 interactions a single day. But the government has reach, which we can't take from them. This is the first source of information people want to look into. Is this approved by the government? Is the government announcing this? And so for sustainable impact, NGOs must try to build a structure that works. One. Secondly, building partnership both with private enterprises and even the government agencies. Two. try as much as possible to bring the government into what we do. It's very, very essential for us to try as much as possible to bring the government into what we do, because it will really, really help us to bring them in. Yes, it's quite stressful to bring them in, but it will help. Then fourthly, NGO must try to seek for sustainable way to run their projects. And when I mean sustainable ways, with NGOs, the NGO world is revolving right now. And that's why you hear the word social enterprise. So as an NGO, what are you doing to have income? So that once the grant you are using to run a particular project ends, how do you sustain it without further grants? And so if you are generating income, you can leave the test of time and keep paying your staff salaries, keep maintaining your project, and keep scaling your work. But if you are just grant relied and the grant changes, or your funding organization has been funding you for 5 years, changing their view from education to agriculture or tech to climate change, what do you do as an NGO? And that's why most organizations now focus on funding social enterprise, NGOs that want to also create impact and also make revenue. And so these are various ways in which organizations can make themselves sustainable. And also one thing I would like to add is that non-profits should ensure they deliver what they promise to deliver. We must live beyond the point of doing what we call picture projects, where you, instead of you to train 50 children, you bring 1,000 children and just take picture for one day and say, oh, their life has been changed. They now have access to quality education because of a single day training. No, things has to change. That funding for that 1,000 people that day can be used to train 20 children or 10 children for the next 3 months, which will give you sustained impact in the lives of these children. It will change their perspective and behavioral change, and help also accomplish your aim and show you proof of results. And so these are various ways in which non-profits or organizations can create sustainable impacts.
Yeah, thank you so much for those inputs. Yeah. So, okay, Mr. David, I would like to go to you. Now, it seems in a way, the buck stop at the table of the government, because they have to coordinate all these activities between the academia, the non-profits, the social enterprises. So what do you think the government is doing wrongly? What do you think they are doing rightly? And how can they move forward to get things better?
With regards to what?
To out-of-school children.
Okay, with regards to out-of-school children, I'll be speaking with reference to Kaduna State, because this is where I'm currently at, and I like how the theme of the event was coined to speak to the Almajiri issue we are having in the north. The Almajiri issue is unique to the northern part of the country. According to the UNESCO, a report they published in 2022, they estimated the total number of out-of-school children in Nigeria to be about 20 million, which is worrisome. And most of these children, about 15 million to be specific, are from the northern part of the country. So the north is bearing a disproportionate amount of these out-of-school children. So the government itself is doing something to solve that. And in the Planning and Budget Commission, we plan and we budget and we allocate funds that the government spends every year. For Kaduna State, a minimum of 25% of the budget, annual budget, I mean the total budget for a year, is allocated to education. And this is both primary, secondary, and tertiary education. So 25% of the total budget is allocated to education year by year. And of this 25%, at least 60% of the 25% is to capital expenditure, and then 40% to recurrent expenditure. That's on the government side. But the major issue that the government is facing is with respect to funding itself, because with the fluctuation in oil revenue and the cash crunch and some policies of the federal government, and even the economy, the COVID and everything that has affected the economy, find out that the government has limited resources for many needs to be met. So it's have to prioritize many of these needs, and you end up having a situation where many of these things are not being paid for. So the cash backing is a major issue. But one area that every government needs to also look into is with regards to development aid coordination. For instance, in Kaduna State, in the Planning and Budget Commission, we have a department, the Development Aid Coordination Department or unit that coordinates all development activities in the state. So if you are an NGO, whether you are implementing partner or a donor partner, you come through the Development Aid Coordination Department. That is where you are registered, and that is how you'll be recognized. And the importance of that is to coordinate the activities so that there won't be conflicts, so that there won't be duplication of efforts, and also so that they will align with the goals and objectives of the state, because the state has an education policy, and for every donor partner or every NGO that wants to operate in the state, it must align with that policy, and they must come to the state to get conversant with this policy and align with this policy, and ensure that what they are doing is not something that has already been done. Because you find instances where one NGO is doing a particular thing, another NGO is doing a particular, and they are doing it in the same community, where there are other communities that don't have such kind of interventions. But when there is coordination, you ensure that there are no duplication of efforts, and maximum impact is achieved. And the government also has a policy of free education. So there is free and compulsory education for primary and secondary school students. And some years back, they introduced the Edo-Marshal, which are like law enforcement agencies that ensure that out-of-school children are in schools. So they move around communities during school hours and see if there are kids that are roaming the street, and they take those kids and bring them to schools. So they take them off the street and bring them off to schools to ensure that they comply with the free and compulsory education policy of the government. And with regards to Almajiri education, there is a serious issue in the north with respect to the Almajiri education, because it's a persistent problem. And these days, it's not just the male children. You also see the female children roaming the streets. In the past, it used to be just the male student, but the female student, young girls roaming the street, begging and scavenging.
Your mic is muted, Mr. David.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Have I been muted
Yes.
since? Oh, I was just muted again.
No.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So the Almajiri on the street, they are not just, the recent trend is that we are not just seeing male children on the street, we are seeing female children, which make them vulnerable to a lot of social advices. So some years back, the government introduced a strategy of taking those children and relocating them to their state of origin, because one of the things with the Almajiri system is that these children are not children that live in the same neighborhood. Their parents usually, their parents don't live in the same neighborhood with them. So the parents usually stay far away in rural areas or in the city, in a different state. So they can take children from Zamfara State, from Kebbi State, from Sokoto State, and bring them to Kaduna to under a tutelage of a Malam, and they will be the Almajiris, and they will be roaming the street. So you can't really see their parents to take them back. You have to find a way of transporting them back to their states of origin or to the rural area where they come from. So that's a challenge. And with respect to also the wider social determinants, the high level of poverty, all this boils down to poverty, because education, is a capital intensive project. Even when you build a school in a neighborhood, if a child is hungry, it will be hard for the child to go to school. So the state introduced the school feeding program even before the federal government started, and one of the benefits of the school feeding program is increase in enrollment. So the children come to school, expecting that they will be fed, and the state, ensure that, and the food is provided for these children so that they will keep coming. And with that, we saw exponential increase in the rate of enrollment in both primary and secondary schools, and even the rate of completion of schools. And one of the policy that the government may consider is with respect to social investment programs and poor programs, like the conditional cash transfer. It's a system where you give financial support to families, but there's a condition attached. The condition is that your child must be in school, or you can say your child must be vaccinated, So you attach these conditions to this conditional cash transfer. So as long as the parents keep their children in school, they'll be happy, they'll be paid this, this stipend. So there's a lot of things that the government can do actually to encourage school enrollment and, reduce the disturbing rate of out-of-school children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Rida, I will still stick with you. I want to ask a question about, in Sokoto states, there's a program which Sokoto states imbibe, just like Dr. Mutiat said, that our people, they love to imbibe that foreign plan and not the local made. So a program from Indonesia that's currently being run by Indonesia, they took it down to Sokoto states, and they are running it. Though, like we said in Skill and Will, is a skills-based approach to solving these out-of-school children in Debeko also. So what do you think about governments bringing this type of stuff from outside the country? Do you think it is a sustainable way for us to address it? And even talking about the issue of conditional cash transfer, there have been so many arguments about it. I'll still come back to Dr. Mtial for that. That is this something so sustainable for us to do that? Do you think you are getting the results from compelling them to do this? Once the money just stops, don't you think they will go back to their default mode?
Okay, the goal is to change the status quo, and with respect to adopting foreign systems or approaches or strategies solving this problem, we need to tread with caution, because it may not work in this context, because what is obtainable in whichever country, whether it's Indonesia or any country we are copying those methods and approaches from, may not be what is obtainable here in our locality. So we need to study the context and see if it has a lot of similarities with our own context and our own uniqueness, and then see if we can, adapt it before we adopt it. So in the process of, domesticating those policies, ensure that we don't just adopt it hook, line, and sinker. See how we can adapt it to our local context, and it feels it and fit it to our own cultures, to our own setting, and ensure that it doesn't fail on arrival. And if you are intervening socially in any community or in any system or in any environment, one of the key things you must understand is the indigenous knowledge system. The Almajiri system is an indigenous knowledge system, right? It was in existence even before the Western education. So it's not something that you can't just come overnight and overhaul it and ban it and then it work. So you must understand the indigenous knowledge system, because there are cultural and even religious underlining to this Almajiri system, and you must understand them and work with community members and see how you can build, or co-create solutions with communities that fits them, not just bringing and importing solutions and imposing it on them. So that's which is the easy way, but to really solve the problem and make it sustainable, you need to figure out all these things and ensure that you get it right. And I want to make a reference to an NGO that operates in Kenya. Kenya is an East African country. It's the name of the NGO is TechLead and TechLight Africa. You can check them on Facebook, TechLight Africa. And the strategy they adopt is to teach digital skills to children in rural primary schools, and they teach them those skills so that by the time they are in the secondary school or thereabout, they can start earning from those skills, working for multinational, taking remote jobs, and be developers for these companies. And software development, you don't need to be present physically. You can be living anywhere in the world and still make money from it. So the goal is to teach them digital skills that will make them self-employed later on in life. And what they do is to work with parents in communities. So the parents give little donations and they go around and seek for donations of laptops from, maybe companies, from organizations that donate those laptops to them. And the schools provide like a computer lab, like a classroom or an accommodation to establish a computer lab, and they put those systems and train those kids in software skills like Python and the rest, so that by the time they are completing primary schools, they have digital skills that can even make them self-employed. So we must build local solutions considering our local context. And the idea of just adopting to what is obtainable, even within Nigeria, what is obtainable in the south may not be what in the north. Not to talk about even going as far away as a foreign country to take an approach and impose it on our people. So it's important to study it and see how it fits to our local context. And then I think that's key to the success of that intervention.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'd like to go to Dr. Mutia now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the question will be like in 2 or 3 folds. I want you to react to the issue of conditional cash transfer as one of the ways to solve this out of school children. Like David said, that you give them money, they have a commitment for them to send their children to school. Is that a sustainable way? And again, we were talking earlier about the fact that researches from our universities are not being integrated by our government. So can't it be because, David mentioned something about co-creation. In the innovation space, it is very, very important to us because we cannot be creating a solution for people that you are not even mingling with, talking to them, have like an empathy with them, or, isn't that because the researches from our universities are not co-created, or they don't have that empathy angle? Or why is it that the government is not doing that? And how can we improve the implementation of ideas from our universities? And again, he's talking about community engagement. Like you rightly said earlier, University of Ibadan is in Aken local governments, all these local governments are attaching to University of Ibadan, but they are not even seeing the impacts of this, of the university. So how can the university now go to them and impact all these communities? How can we do it better to make sure that we have less and lesser amount of out of school children on our streets?
Thank you. You talked about CCT, conditional cash transfer, and probably giving it to parents as a way out. Number one, before you do CCT to parents, or first of all, understand what is their value for school. Because when we are talking about out of school children, do you know some parents actually in their own volition as a philosophy of life choose not to enroll their children in schools, or enroll their children in schools as if they are on a part-time schooling basis, even for primary and secondary school. Now, that has to do with our grassroots and culture. To some parents, the children will have to work on the farm. They have to work on their vocations, the vocations that emanate from the family, maybe extended family, some of these indigenous vocations. And so that's the reason why you have some children out of school. It's not all out of school children that are purposeless. Some are actually purposeful because there is already a job within their community, within their families that needs to be sustained. So in such cases, those parents already have a value that they are not interested in you just sitting in school 24/7. We are interested in you focusing on this vocation. And so when you are looking at out of school children, as disadvantaged it looks like in the majority, when you look at it in the majority, you should also consider dynamics of the fact that there are some spaces that school value, the value they really have for school is that the children should just have that exposure and that's it, because there is already a kind of job that is available to the children. Then another thing is, if you look at some places, the children that are apprentices these days, you see 12, 13, 14-year-old boys and girls that they already enroll them as apprentices. And so in some days, maybe when they feel that, especially in suburban schools that are not in the core of the city, you see them saying, I'm not going to school today, I'm going to shop. maybe as apprentice for one thing or the other. Then you ask them a question, why? Our teachers don't have much to offer, and I can't just be wasting my time sitting down in the classroom when I have things to learn. So those are the dynamics. So we also see those ones as out of school anyway, and their parents will prefer them to do it that way because now these are the reasons. They already understand that by the time they finish secondary school, there is no plan or hope that they will be furthering education into higher institutions. So the best they could do at that point is to just learn something and from there be able to start earning money. To such parents, that is the most sustainable thing to do. So that's also a way of life. That's a perspective to look at these things. Then that's why the issue of scarcity, if I know government does it, but they have to do it smartly because not all parents have value for. Hello?
Yes, I'm with you, ma.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Not all parents have value for schooling in that sense. For a lot of parents already have value for vocational education, right from when their children are in the teenage stage. And if you look at histories of the world, America, China, those are the ways they developed into the industrial level. So you have to factor in that when you are looking out of school. Then secondly, you talked about how researches are not impacting enough, if I get you right. Well, there's what we call translation, translating your research into practice. But then a fundamental question is, translating your research into practice comes in various forms. It doesn't have to be structured. It comes in unstructured forms. Now, presently, as I am personally, there is a way I translate my researches into practice in unstructured or informal forms. So that depends on individual. But what we are attacking here is the fact that there are lack of structured formats that could make your research relevant. The Nigerian state lacks the structured formats. But when it comes to, non-formal way, informal ways or structured formats, of course, in Yoruba, there is something we call alati shema matishare. If you are really interested in getting your research relevant to society, you will know what to do as an individual. But when we are talking about it in the collective, it's a very difficult. But then I know that the university tries its best. For example, there is this center in US, Center for Social Orientation, CENSO, I think, that goes around secondary schools in the UI environs to do counseling programs for students so that they could have a clear-cut career path moving forward into their future. And so that's laudable enough. It's something that if you check UI social media handles, you will see that activity there. So in one way or the other, the university is also trying to be in the business of the society in its own capacity, though government funding is almost zero for that. So I don't know what's your third question. There is a third question.
Okay, I think you already took all the questions together already.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So I would like to ask like the closing thoughts from you that what do you think, like assuming you are meeting with the incoming president tomorrow now, that's what would you like to tell him to make sure that he work more on for us to have a sustainable solution to the out of school children in Nigeria?
Vocational education, that's it. We need to rejig our thoughts on education and do education that will be useful for vocation and industrial development. Not this kind of education we are having presently now. We are running at a loss and we are sitting on a gunpowder that will burst because additional 148 universities all together in a country that cannot produce anything for its own consumption, there is trouble. Meaning that people will just be going to school without having anything to offer. Recently, I was reading a social media comment where some guys said it is even shameful for them these days to say they are graduates in their community because they realize that the guys that did not go to school beyond primary or secondary education are into vocations that is fetching them money to earn livelihood. Whereas they that went to university, they are out there so penniless and living in penury, trying to struggle to make ends meet, while the ones that just learned a trade or vocation are really making money to sustain their lives. So we need to look into that dynamics and see how we can balance having a kind of basic quality education with a kind of vocational and industrial education that is going to be sustainable.
Thank you very much, ma.
You're
So,
welcome.
Mr. David, your closing thoughts. As you're already a special assistant already, assuming you are now appointed as special assistant to incoming President Tinubu now, what would be your advice?
Okay, education is the easiest way to climb up the social ladder. In addition to what she said, we shouldn't completely scrap off the formal education and just focus on the vocational and technical education. We can have both. In fact, if you look at the history of education in Nigeria at the time, there was a lot of emphasis on vocational and technical education in Nigeria. That was what came up with the monotechnics, the polytechnics, and then the vocational, entrepreneurial, and technical training centers, the TVET centers, and the science and technical colleges. These are all strategies to give people an option apart from, the usual or the traditional education. And I believe that what the incoming administration should do is to prioritize education in their budgets. Prioritize education by not just, giving a number like 25% at least of the budget to go to education. They should also back it up by providing the funds required, the cash backing to implement education programs and interventions. And with regards to education, primary and secondary education will be free and compulsory all over the country, because I believe it's a responsibility of government to provide this basic education. The primary and secondary education should be free and compulsory, and government should ensure that we have quality teachers, we have quality learning materials, we have the infrastructure for primary and secondary education. But for anyone that wants to go beyond secondary education, I think the government should make two options for them. One is to proceed to a technical, entrepreneurial, and vocational entrepreneurial and technical training center, which will be like a polytechnic or monotechnic or any of such centers, and it should also be free for each and every citizen. I believe not everyone should go to the university. University is expensive, and after the study, you find out that it may not even be worth it. You may end up doing something completely different from what you studied. You need to have, like she mentioned, you need to have a skill, and then maybe the education is not really as important as you think. So not everyone needs to go to the university, not just because it's expensive, it's because also of its applicability. Not everyone will be a pharmacist or a doctor or an engineer. We need people that will be plumbers, we need electricians, we need mechanics, we need bricklayers. All of these things are technical and vocational skills. So we should make it free for everyone to obtain technical, entrepreneurial, and vocational skills. But if you want to go to the university, probably we should start thinking of people paying out of pocket. The subsidy that have been provided in education, has not really been a good investment, because after the education, you find out that people are jobless. So you spend money to send people to school, and after school, they are jobless. So maybe let's have the numbers we need that will go to university and fund our university very well. People have to pay to get good education at the university. But for primary, secondary, and vocational education, I think the government should make it free and readily available for everyone. So that's my own idea with regards to education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our panelist, Dr. Mutiat. We so much appreciate your input and your presence today. And also thank you, David Aliga, and also in absentia, Mr. Basanjo Fajemiruku. You have to leave for another engagement. So thank you so much for this opportunity in honoring us and providing so much insights on how to address the issue of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Because to me, I always say, like, this is not for them only, it is for all of us, because if we don't train them today, we are like breeding the next set of terrorists, bandits around us, and we have to do that, and we do it well. So thank you so much, and I hand over to Rashidat to close the events.
Thank you so much. Before we close the events, I would like to know if anyone has a question for Dr. Mutiat or Mr. Aluga, so that he can attend to a few questions on what we might need to know or want to know, or probably an addition to whatever it is that we've discussed today. Please, any question, suggestion, addition, it's an interactive session. Please let the floor is open to us. Okay, we'll be doing that in the next 2 minutes. Any question, please? In the absence of no question, we thank everyone that has come here to listen. I hope we all gained something. We are all living with something very important, that the children on our streets, the out-of-school children, something has to be done. And I hope that will provoke some level of change and impact in our society. And thank you to our panelists, Mr. David Aluga and Dr. Mutiat and Mr. Obasanjo. As we are ending this program, would like us all to on our cameras, so let's know our faces before we end the session with the national anthem afterwards. We'll just be on in our cameras for a few pictures and the national anthem afterwards. Then we can all leave the session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. I will take the picture in 3 seconds. Now. Yeah, all taken. I'm true. So thank you so much. So,
thank you everyone for joining. We'll be having the national anthem now. Mr. Abdulaziz. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your support to make this event a reality. In absence of no question, we declare this interactive session closed, and we hope that next year it will be in a bigger and better way. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.